What's up, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube? Boogie 988 coming at you live once again. Today I want to start a new series of videos, and I'm just going to call it Story Time because it's going to be stories from my life, either things that have happened recently or things that have happened in the past, stuff that my friends and my family have heard, but you guys have never got a chance to hear. And I think it's interesting. I think you'll enjoy it. So let me know what you think. But the first story I want to tell you is very formative about the informative about the person that I am and how I developed the sense of humor that I have. And when I was a kid, my grandmother had Alzheimer's disease, which is a terrible disease. It causes dementia and memory loss, and it takes a very, very long time to actually kill you. And it's depressing and awful and just heartbreaking, not just for the person suffering from the disease, but the people around them. And my grandmother took about 10 years total from diagnosis to her eventual death, when her brain eventually told her heart and lungs to stop pumping, like it forgot to remind her. I was about 8 years old, or maybe 7 when this happened. I'm not really sure. But way back then, we didn't all have cell phones in our pockets like we do today. If you wanted to make a phone call, you either had to make a phone call from home or from a public payphone. So we were down in Kingsport, Tennessee. My grandparents lived 75 minutes away from there. We were down there shopping, and we decided to visit the grandparents. It was me and my mom, and I think my father was with us. I don't remember who else. I think it was just us three. And we called my grandfather and said, "Hey, Daddy Carl," that's what we called him. "Hey, Daddy Carl, how's Mama doing today? Is she healthy? Is she having a good day? Is today a good day to visit?" And Daddy Carl says, "Sure. Why don't you guys come up? She's having a great day. I think it'll be a great visit." So we start driving, and it's like 75 minutes away. It's a good distance. And on our way there, it starts raining, and so it takes us even longer than normal. And while we were driving there, my grandfather was helping my grandmother get changed. So she was in her underwear, and he, somewhere along the lines, she got it into her head that my grandfather was attempting to kill her, which is, that happens with Alzheimer's disease. So you don't recognize the people in your life. You don't, So my grandmother decided to hide the knives that were in the house, so that my grandfather couldn't kill her with them. But by that point, all the sharp knives had been locked up in a place, and she didn't know where that place was. So all we had in the house there was butter knives. So she had gathered up all of the butter knives, and she went out to the garden in the front, and she started digging a hole in the mud and the rain in her, just to bury these knives. And that's when we pulled up. Right then, we pulled up to see my grandmother in her tidy whities and her bra in the garden, covered in mud, rain just pouring down her, digging a hole in the garden right there in front of the house, screaming at my grandfather, shoving butter knives into this hole she's dug. And my brain had to make a choice at that moment. It had to say, either this is the most traumatic, depressing, awful experience of your life, and you're going to spend the rest of your life depressed about it. Or this is one of the funniest things you've ever seen in your life. That's your grandmother in her underwear digging a hole in the garden, burying butter knives. That's funny. It's awful, but it's funny. So I began to laugh. And my mother didn't appreciate it at all. She turned around from the front seat to look at me, and she says, "What the hell are you laughing at?" And being a 7-year-old kid, I responded with, "Well, maybe she'll grow a butter tree." I don't know, I'm 7. Well, anyway, my mother didn't like that at all, and I think she hit me about 10 to 15 times in the face. But it was formative of what my sense of humor had become. And I used to find, every racist, fucking hate-filled, bigoted, all that awful stuff that you hear in comedy, all that really terrible shit, like George Carlin's, darkest moments, Sam Kinnison's darkest shit. I used to find that the funniest stuff. That was the stuff that really got me going. The more wrong it was, the more awful it was, the worse it was, the better it was to me. And I used to just repeat these jokes to my friends, or repeat these jokes to myself. I'd read certain websites. I think you can probably figure out which ones I'm talking about. Certain websites that cater to that kind of awful, dark sense of humor. And in the past year or so, I have begun to realize that when I repeat these kinds of jokes, I'm harming some of the people around me. I'm harming some of the people that I care about. And most notably, when I said something insensitive about 6 months ago, I really hurt a couple of friends of mine. And it left a scar right here on my heart. It made me really think about the way that I was acting and the way that I was saying in public or in private company, and the effect that it could have. And now I've spent the better part of my 6 months since then trying to strip that part of me out and to be a better person and to find, I still, I'm not going to lie, I've read every Aurora joke that there was, and they're awful and they're terrible, and I've seen them on my YouTube channel, I've seen them on my Facebook, I've seen people repeating them, and I know that the way that we deal with humor is the way we deal with tragedy, the way we deal with trauma, the way we deal with abuse, the way we deal with suffering. Many people use humor as a way to counteract that. In fact, some comedians will tell you that the reason you make fun of the most awful shit in the world is to depower it and to break it down. But every once in a while, someone listening to your joke, someone listening to your set, someone within earshot is going to be affected in a negative way. And I'll tell you, I'll close in on one of my favorite stories. If you ever get an opportunity to watch a documentary about comedians called The Aristocrats, fantastic show, fantastic movie. It's about a joke called The Aristocrats, which you can Google. I won't get into the details now, but the short version of it is, it's a joke that comedians tell other comedians to make them laugh. And every time you tell it, you want to tell it a little different. Bob Saget delivers a version. Look on YouTube, Bob Saget, The Aristocrat, to see the best version of that joke out there. But they tell a story about a Friars Roast a few weeks after 9/11, and how they all had to go, all these comedians had to go into this room, and they didn't feel like laughing. They didn't want to laugh because New York had this pall cast over it, and it was terrible. And Gilbert Gottfried was roast master that night, and he took the stage, and he started with this joke. He said, "I'm sorry that I was late, but my airplane was diverted into the Sears Tower." And no one laughed. Like, no one found that funny. So then he went into the Aristocrats to save his face and went on. And when he did that, like, that elephant was in the room, so to speak. And he pointed and he went, "Right there's the elephant. There it is. Let's get it out of the way. Everyone sees the elephant. Now let's go. Let's enjoy our night." And I'm glad that he did that, And I tried to do that. But I can't help but think, man, maybe there are better ways. And there are some things that are just never funny. Daniel Tosh, I'm looking at you.